Now, as part of the procedures for testing and evaluating IS controls, you might consider that the use of audit software. Now, this is especially important because in some instances there could be an overwhelming amount of data that we humanly couldn't go through an audit in any short amount of time. So we might have some audit software that's helping us in that process. You know, I think of historically when this huge company of Enron was going under quite a bit of scrutiny for a lot of accounting irregularities. I was told that the amount of information that they had to audit, and this was many years ago, but was in the many terabytes of data. I don't know how many people it would take for us to be able to adequately go through terabytes of information manually. And so I'm going to imagine that there was some sort of auditing software used to help make that task easier. Flow charting techniques is another part of the procedures that we go through. Use of audit logs or reports. That would be your CIS log services. Your audit logs, if you're looking at physical security, it could be things like who came in, who's left, who came to work, who didn't come to work, those types of things. I mean, I'm kind of all over the place because, again, we're being very general about the type of auditing. We want to review the documentation presented to us, documentation about a control, about a process, about their own procedures and policies. We need to ask questions. We need to ask questions about the people that are involved with the processes that we're auditing. A lot of times we're going to be asking questions to see if the steps that they go through match the procedures that their company has put forth, making sure that they're in compliance, making observations about how people do their jobs. And all right, I got to tell you, people get nervous around auditors because, when you're watching them, they're going to that's the time that they're going to follow the procedures exactly, hoping that they've memorized those procedures rather than any little shortcuts they've taken. And I realize that kind of makes auditing difficult, I should say, to do, because we might not getting a true glimpse into how things are happening. But again, that's where we can ask questions, make observations, and our goal is not to vilify anybody. It's to just basically see what we're there for, an audit, to find out if they're in compliance, if there's things we can do for improvements. You should also include walkthroughs. I mean, you should see the areas that you're auditing. The walkthrough could be logical in your scanning through the setup of a database server, or through encryption technologies, or it could be a walk through the entire department that you're auditing. But you should be familiar with the area. And again, we've said that several times in many different ways. That is, that you should have a good knowledge of what it is that you're going to be auditing. Now, the methodology you use for auditing should first be approved by management, and it's going to contain the set of documented procedures that are designed to achieve the audit objectives. Now, this should have a statement of scope, objectives, and audit programs. Now, why should we talk about management when later on I told you need to be independent? Okay, we're still talking about independence. But, the idea is that your audit methodology, and let's just look at it from this standpoint. There are some, and I'm going to put some things together. I talked about that there are some automated software programs you might use for auditing. Some of those, and let me just use one example of a free program that you can go and download and look at and verify what I'm saying. It's called Nessus, and it's a vulnerability scanner. And that's great because it can go through and do that automation, maybe look at a server to see if it's been patched, if it's got any known issues of vulnerabilities. But what they tell you in the use of something like Nessus is that some of the plugins, some of the things that the tests that they do could cause a server to crash. Now, if you do this type of an audit methodology this type of a step during a high point of production, you take a server down. Now we've caused the damage that we're trying to prevent against operations. And so, I think it's something management needs to approve, that they know what the risks are. And we haven't even talked about audit risk, really, but there is a risk to our doing an audit. One of them could be what I've just described. So it's important that management approves the methodology and the procedures that we're going to go through to get to those objectives, because they may have input in saying, yeah, that is important to do, but the timing now might be a part of that detailed procedure of when should we do certain types of audits. Now, the phases of the audit methodology. We start off with, of course, the audit subject and the objectives and scope of what it is that we're auditing. Again, objective is, what's the goal? What are we trying to test for? And the scope is, in many ways, giving us the permission to look at the audit subject, meaning that if we want to look at something else and it's outside of our scope, we don't have the rights. We don't have those permissions to do that. We want to keep within scope, know the objectives. We should have some pre-audit planning. And again, that's important because the planning portion could be when the audit's going to be, what resources we're going to use to perform that audit. All of these things that go together in helping make sure that we're ready to properly do this audit, which then takes us through the audit procedures and the steps that we would use for data gathering. We should have procedures on the different types of tests we're going to use to evaluate that object or that subject. When we're done, we should be able to take and gather that information, that evidence, and to be able to include it into the reporting and our communication back to those who've chartered us to do these audits. And of course, we're going to gather that information and use it for the preparation of the report that we turn in as that final product. In fact, you got to remember that that report is really what you're getting paid for, is that final work being done.